Hello again, I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. Thank you for joining us again today for Ask the Candidate. My special guest is Chris Powell. Chris is a Libertarian and running for the office of Governor of the state of Oklahoma. Chris, first off, welcome to Enid. Welcome to the Enid Television Network studios. Thank you for stopping by today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Busy guy, huh?
Oh, certainly.
Most
trying
days.
to do as much as we can as we're counting down the days here.
Well, again, we want to remind everybody that the primary is coming up on June 26th, and we encourage everyone to get out and vote. Chris, again, welcome to Enid, and right off the bat, we've all viewed the legislature this past year and years and noticed they seem to get along, they don't seem to get along. There seems to be a lot of discussion between a couple political sides, if you will, mainly Republican and Democrats. But as governor for the state of Oklahoma, Chris, what would you do to make sure all entities, doesn't matter what party it is, but what would you do to get all entities to work together?
Well, I think the first thing is that I am not a particularly partisan guy, and as far as if you have a differing viewpoint, I'm not going to automatically view you as the enemy. And I think that's that approach. We have not seen that as much in the legislature as we did once upon a time. We still have like rural-urban conflict. We still have other undercurrents besides just the partisanship. But it used to be that we had more cooperation among those different coalitions than we do now. And I think it's important to try to foster an atmosphere where those kind of different coalitions can come back to the fore. I also think that being a libertarian, that I'm not automatically the enemy in the way that somebody who's of that other establishment party is going to be for a lot of those people down at the Capitol. And that's going to give me some leverage to build bridges between differing sides in any conflict that's down there. To be frank, I don't think that our current governor has done a very good job of building coalitions and getting people who see things differently in the same room and talking together and working something out. And that's something that the next governor, which I hope to be, has got to be able to do a good job of. If we don't have somebody who can bring people together, it's going to make things even worse than they are now.
Chris, let me ask you this. As governor, what would you do in promoting or providing an environment where Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 companies would want to relocate here in Oklahoma and provide more jobs? What would you do to promote that?
Well, education is really important. If we've got people that companies want to hire, if we have human capital that is attractive, then companies are going to come here, and people that are here already are going to be more interested in and more able to build things themselves. And when you get everything growing in the right direction, then you don't have to necessarily offer incentives and things like that in the same way if it already looks like everything is happening here. And I think we can do that. Oklahomans are incredibly capable. I've never gone to any place in Oklahoma where I saw people who couldn't do just really amazing things. But we have to unleash that potential, and a lot of it has to do with education, with preparing our young people to do all kinds of skilled labor jobs that we have openings that we can't fill. There is a great need for all kinds of jobs that require a little bit of training, but not necessarily college degrees. They're good paying jobs, and we can't fill them because the baby boomers are retiring out, and we didn't tell any of our young people, hey, you can do this as well, and it's a really good, fulfilling job. So building that human capital across the state, I think, is a key to creating an environment where we're going to have growth, and it'll be growth from wherever it comes from. We don't have to attract other people to come here if we are building our own businesses from the ground up. Other companies will see that and they'll come here on their own.
One of the topics that we've seen recently, or really the past several months, had to deal with some agencies, state agencies, and a little bit on the wasteful spending side. So as governor, what would you do to really eliminate wasteful spending?
Well, one of the problems that we have is that we do not have a very transparent state government. We have open records and freedom of information laws, but the state legislature has exempted themselves from that. And from the state legislature to all the other state agencies, it's created an atmosphere where we got to keep everything hidden. We can't let this piece of information out, this piece or that piece of information out. That's what created the problem at the health department. You had 3 people there who were in the know with what was really going on, and they weren't telling anybody else. They were specifically keeping it from the legislature to protect their budget. And of course, they got themselves in some real hot water over it. I'm sure that that's happening in other state agencies. We need an atmosphere where everything's on the table, where the people can see what's going on, and that really needs to start in the legislature, and it needs to start with the leadership in both chambers. We did have, I believe it was 2013, we did have under Speaker Shannon, there was a process by which a lot of the power that's held by the speaker was relinquished to the committees and various other people within the body, and it wasn't all done in a back room. And it lasted 1 year because there are a lot of special interests who prefer to see things done in the back room where nobody can see it. Well, we need to open up that process. And it's going to start with leadership from the governor's office, showing this is the way that we do it, and we let everybody know what's going on, and we don't hide things. If we don't have a governor who's prepared to do that, then we're going to continue to have the backdoor government, backroom government that we have now, and we're going to continue to have lots of money that we don't know where it went. So we need a change.
Chris, before we started taping today, you'd mentioned about your background or upbringing being in Oklahoma, and you have strong family ties here in the state of Oklahoma. So you're well aware of the strong work ethic and also the fabric or the moral fabric that Oklahomans have, and how proud they are of the state. You're aware of everybody else, I should say, but what would you bring in regards to values and character to the governor's office?
Well, I'm not part of the political establishment. I'm a regular guy who goes to work every day. I do this whole run for governor thing when, as well as working Monday through Friday, every week. And that's something that we haven't really seen in the governor's office in a long time. Somebody who is in that regular, everyday working world, who understands the everyday concerns of people. I work for the Oklahoma City Police Department. I spent 6 years as a 911 dispatcher. I still go over there and work overtime occasionally. And that really, you really get a feel for what's going on in a community when you're taking those calls from people who are in a situation where they need some kind of response like that, whether it's knowing where certain kinds of crimes are taking place, or talking to mentally ill people who are calling for assistance, all those kinds of things. I understand Oklahoma in a way that nobody else running for governor does. So I think I can bring that understanding and those values of the fact that everybody has value. It's just that there's a lot of people in those tall buildings down in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa who can't see that very well. So I bring that perspective, and of course, like you said, I was talking about my family's, every branch of my family's been here before statehood, and genealogy is a hobby of mine, so I've looked them all up and know what they were all doing. And they're all working people and farmers and things like that, and I've seen how their lives progressed over time in our state, and my Oklahoma roots run deep, and those kind of roots are strong work, are hard work, and perseverance, and dealing with things as they come. So that's kind of what I'm trying to bring to the governor's office, is that perspective, not from the top down, but from the bottom up.
Chris, let's move to a topic that is something that touches our lives each and every day, and that's our infrastructure, our roads and bridges as we travel to and from across the state. So in your administration, what would be your plan to keep the maintenance of and upgrades to our road and bridges intact? Because we hear all the time of the need to upgrade or replace a bridge, and we're way behind on doing so. But what's the plan to meet that need?
Well, I think that one of the first things that needs to happen is we need to have a performance audit of the Department of Transportation. Now, a performance audit, sometimes an agency will request a performance audit themselves. Who was it that did Department of Corrections did that. And the performance audit came back and said, for what you're trying to do, you're not providing enough funds to do it. Now, the legislature hasn't done anything about that, but that performance audit is going to show whether Department of Transportation is doing what we're asking them to do, if we're giving them the resources to do that, and what kind of changes we need to make. So that's a first step. I also think that we've seen, I know that we've seen to the tune of $230 million recently that the legislature moved funds away from the CIRB, stuff that goes to county, funds that go to county roads to keep those in all 77 counties, keep those roads in good shape. And our county commissioners, I've talked to several, they're very displeased, and they've been displeased for a long time about the resources that they've not been getting to be able to try to keep our roads in good shape. So we really need to look at how we're doing it, and that's the place to start, is with a performance audit. And we also need to look at making sure that we don't build more roads than we can maintain. Everybody likes a new road. A politician loves to go out and say, look, here's this great new road that I built for you. But if we can't maintain it, it doesn't do us any good, because in just a few years, with the kind of damage that some of our industry does to our roads, it'll be just in as bad a shape as all the rest of them. So we need to look at that, and we need to look at making sure that the industries that do the damage to our roads pay for what they're doing. We have a lot of heavy trucks that do a lot of different things. And I'm not looking to be punitive, but let's make sure that we're paying full freight for keeping our roads up to date so that we can keep the industry here. Because if we just use up the roads and they can't get their goods from place to place, they're going to be looking to do something else anyway.
Well, let's move from roads to marijuana. Perfect segue, I guess. But only because it's a lot of individuals that I've talking to, they're I don't know if they're confused, but they're just not clear what this medical marijuana is all about and the issue before people. So first off, kind of just share with us your views on medical marijuana, and also about the issue that's before the voters.
Well, State Question 788 would make cannabis legal for medical purposes. It would require a doctor's recommendation for someone to be able to get a card and be able to acquire or grow for their own use, grow cannabis for their own use. So it does go through a doctor. It does have that process. I've heard a lot of people say that it's really a recreational bill. Well, it's a statutory bill, which means that once it's passed, the legislature can change any part of it or all of it. And if it passes by a very slim majority, they could very well feel like they have the political opportunity to repeal the whole thing, and many of them would want to do that. If it passes by a larger majority, they may tighten up the regulations to make sure that it's not misused according to their lights, but they won't repeal the whole thing. So I'm in favor of passage. I'll tell you a personal story. The Hiltebrands, Amy and Jason Hiltebrand, that I went to school with in Choctaw, their son Austin has Dravet syndrome. He was on a cornucopia of pharmaceuticals, and he was going to die. And they uprooted their family. Jason had just gotten his dream job of being a fireman, and he had to let that go. They uprooted their family to go to Colorado, where they could access cannabis for him, and he's thriving now. They'd like to come back home. Their family would like them to come back home, but they can't until they can get the medicine that they need for him. So it's definitely something that's needed, and we need to pass it by a healthy majority so the legislature doesn't try to take it back off the board, but it is statutory. everything that, if there's any problems with it that come up, they can be addressed, and it's not the sky is falling as some of these other candidates have claimed. And I think that we need to go beyond that once we pass it. But we need to pass that, and then people can see how it works, and learn that this is, like they've learned in so many other states, that it's not the end of the world, that it's a step in the right direction, and it's also going to help us with criminal justice reform, because we have too many people and too many of the wrong people in our prison system. We can't afford it, and we put people in there and they come out more dangerous than when they came in, and they can't find a job and they wind up back in crime, and we just hurt people. So we definitely need to pass 788.
Oklahoma is an energy state, but it's also a military state, very important to us, various bases across Oklahoma. And then recent years have been the continuing development of wind energy. There was a story, national news, about some challenges between wind energy and the wind turbines, and also Air Force Base in Texas. And it seems like as wind energy continues to be developed in Oklahoma, we may get to this challenge of how we all work together, especially here in northwest Oklahoma, where we really reinforce the Oklahoma State song, when the wind comes sweeping down the plains. We definitely have the wind, but we also have military bases. As governor, under your leadership, what would you do in just making sure all entities involved work together for the benefit of the state?
Well, obviously we need to communicate with the leaders on our military bases, the base commanders, and the flight, the flight command of each of those bases. Certainly it's a big concern for Vance, and that's a big part of this community and has been for a long time. So definitely we want to make sure that we don't cause them problems simply through a lack of communication. I was in the Marine Corps myself, so I understand a little bit about how the military works and how you've got to communicate and make sure that everybody gets the information that they need to be able to do that. But we need to make sure that we don't have any issues with that, as far as not just with the assessment to make sure that those wind turbines are not in the flight path, but also the other parts of the issue with the fact that they can cause feedback as far as some of the equipment that's used on these planes, as for the radar and that kind of thing. I certainly don't know the technical details and would need somebody to assist me with that, but I don't know anybody else who's running who would know that information just by themselves. But understanding it, getting the right people to advise us, and making sure that we've got communication all the way around, so that we don't miss any economic opportunities, but we don't shoot ourselves in the foot as far as our military bases, I think is very important.
Chris, this is the opportunity. Our visit has gone rather quickly. We've gone through all the standard questions, if you will, but this is the opportunity for you to speak to the viewers, speak to the voters, and feel free to do so at this time.
Well, I certainly appreciate being here in Enid. Wow, that's Enid. I know where I'm at today. So, and I appreciate Enid TV giving me the opportunity to speak to everybody up here. I've been up here a number of times for different things. Field trips to Leonardo's. Before that, when I sold safety toe footwear, I came up here to do some business in this area, and I've always enjoyed it every time I've come up here. This is really a hardy, persevering place up here in northwestern Oklahoma, and that's the kind of people that we need to empower to control your own lives, to build the kind of lives that you want, and build your community and go forward. And that's what libertarians are about. We're about you living your life the way that you see fit, rather than being told what to do by a bunch of politicians down at 23rd and Lincoln. So I think that we've seen from the two establishment parties and what they've done, not just in the past couple of sessions, but over our entire state's history, that they brought us to where we are now. If you're happy with the status quo, I'm not sure what you're looking at, but you can go ahead and vote for that. But if you're ready for something different, I'm here to offer a new direction for Oklahoma. And I'd certainly appreciate your vote on June 26th if you're a registered libertarian, and then after that on November 6th when I expect to be on your ballot at that time. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. I understand you have done, how many forums have you done? You lost track after 50? Is that it?
I'm sure we're in double digits by now. I've been all over the state, and I'm happy to finally get to Enid. We were supposed to be here in February, but we had that ice storm that was threatened, and so we got pushed back. So finally made it up here, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you being here today. And we appreciate you being with us here today on Ask the Candidate. Our special guest, Libertarian candidate for governor, Chris Powell. So keep in mind, as Chris said, primary race is coming up, or the vote, I should say, on June 26th, and be sure to get out and vote. Again, this is Steve Kime with the City of Enid. Thank you for joining us here on Ask the Candidate, and we'll talk to you in the near future with another candidate. Thank you.